And I want to go over some of what you've been telling us today. You would agree some of what you told us today you've never told anybody else before, right?
No, I wouldn't agree to that.
You would not agree to that? Who else did you tell about the can of WD-40?
I have told the state's detectives, and whenever it has been asked about, I have been telling them about it. Correct.
Whenever it has been asked about?
No, so that was something that I couldn't fully remember the night of, having the trauma of everything else. It was more so the main event of what happened on the front yard. That was something that had come back to me later on, but as soon as I had remembered it and was in any kind of interview again, I had brought it up and told them about it.
Would you be surprised to learn, sir, that that did not ever appear in any of the statements that you gave prior?
No, I would not, because as I said, those statements were prior to me being able to remember that.
Gotcha. So you've remembered it now, today?
Yes, and prior to this.
You didn't remember it when you gave a statement on May 15th at 12:43 a.m. that you wrote in your own hand, right?
The following day?
12:43 a.m. on the 15th, that's right.
No, I did not.
Okay. And that was your own handwritten statement, correct?
I believe so.
Didn't mention the can of WD-40 then, did you?
No, because I hadn't remembered it.
Right. You spoke with Officer Nembhard. You didn't tell him anything about the WD-40 can, correct?
When was that?
Also on the 15th of May.
No.
And then again on the 15th of May, when you spoke with Officer Giddon, you didn't mention anything about this can of WD-40, did you?
No, so on the 15th of May, that was not something I had recalled.
And it wasn't something that you recalled when you spoke again to Officers Bitko and Staples at 11:25 a.m. with your father in your living room. No mention of that can of WD-40, correct?
Not that I recall, but what day was that?
The 15th.
So yeah, anything on the 15th, I had no recollection of that on the 15th.
And then again, when you spoke with Officers Bango and Iannotti on the 18th, because they wanted to clarify, as you've said, your statement, you didn't mention anything about the WD-40 at that date either, did you?
No, I did not.
Okay. But you're telling us about the can of WD-40 today?
Correct, because once I recalled it, I have not tried to hide it or anything at all.
Okay. So you were telling us that this party at your house began sometime in the area of 7 to 8 o'clock that day on the 14th, correct?
Yeah, around that time.
You were hanging out in the basement, correct?
Correct.
What was going on in the basement was maybe drinking a few beers, right?
I definitely know I had one or two, and I do know that there was other kids drinking as well.
Okay, so it wasn't maybe drinking a few beers. There was beers being drunk,
No,
right?
I said I drank a few beers.
Right. You said that maybe people were drinking a few beers.
No, people were drinking a few beers. There was
Definitely drinking a few beers.
definitely had a few beers, yes.
You yourself only had one or two?
Yes,
You sure about that?
I'm positive.
How are you so positive about that?
Because I know I didn't drink more than that. It was my house. I already had more people show up than were supposed to be there. I was making sure that everything stayed under control.
Well, when you say everything stayed under control, you were 18 at the time?
I was.
So you were breaking the law by drinking those one or two beers, correct?
Yeah.
But you considered that to be keeping things under control?
I mean, we were dumb high school kids. I think everybody's had a few beers in high school, but I think I also had everything in control until the point where the defendant and the car full of his friends arrived at the house.
Gotcha. It was all under control until that point. Did you tell your folks that you were going to be having this party over at the house that night?
No, I did not.
Mom was gone to Cape Cod?
Yes.
And Dad was out somewhere?
Yes.
You told us that you had a few folks there that you identified. One of those was Faison Teal.
Correct.
Another one was Tommy Connery,
Correct.
Ryan Hines,
Correct.
and Jimmy McGrath.
Correct.
And you said that as far as those four folks go, these were kids that you had all grown up with, played football with, friends with, correct?
Correct.
And the same goes for Ricky Fiola. You grew up with him. He was part of your friend group, and you played football together.
Correct.
Sal Perry had been your best friend for a long time.
Correct.
Michael Sampieri, just a good friend for a long time.
Correct.
And then you told us that one kid who was there that you didn't really know was the first time you met him. That was Alex Burnson, correct?
Yes, it was.
Alex Burnson came with Tanner Chernowski, right?
Yes.
How did you know Tanner Chernowski?
I've grown up with him around the same mutual friends, and we went to high school together, but we are friends, yes.
You were due to graduate that May, correct, or that June?
Yes.
And Tanner Chernowski, he'd already graduated?
Yeah, he's the year above me.
Alex Burnson, he'd already graduated?
I don't know.
Tommy Connery, he had already graduated?
Yes, he did.
He told us that you also knew Griffin Marcinzik, correct?
Yep.
And you learned somehow, you told us, that Ryan Hines had been, as you described it, jumped earlier that night, correct?
Correct.
But you told us you hadn't learned anything about a group chat that was going on.
Correct. I had no idea that there was any text messaging being sent back and forth. All I knew was that they had come to my house, Ryan and Griffin, and I was told that they were having Tanner come get them with his friend Alex.
Okay. And that everybody was already there except for Tanner and Alex, correct?
So Tanner, Alex were the last two that showed up, and obviously before them it was Griffin and Hines.
And so at that point, before Tanner and Alex show up, there were about 30 people at your house.
Total, yeah, there was about 30, but I would say probably only 18 to 20 of them were boys, and there was probably about 10 to 12 girls who obviously didn't partake in anything that happened that night.
Okay. 18 to 20 boys, and then we also have to add in Tanner and Alex when they get there, correct?
Well, that 18 to 20, I would say, is with them, but if you want to say another two on top, I guess that's okay too.
Well, fair to say you didn't count the folks that were there, right?
Not that night, no.
So when you say 18 to 20 or 22, you're guessing, is that fair to
No,
say?
I'm not guessing. I was actually brought a list by the Shelton PD of names with about, I don't even know how many people on it from both parties, and went through it and was able to identify, I believe it was 32 total people that were there.
Okay, so there were 32
I could be
people
wrong
there.
on that exact number, but it was definitely somewhere in the 30s.
And that was based on a list of names that the police gave you?
Correct.
You didn't give them the names?
No, they had names from statements and other names that have come up through the night.
And then you said, yeah, there may have been a little bit of drinking, just beer and seltzers, but not what it was made to be by the media. What did you mean by that?
Correct. This wasn't a alcohol-fueled 70 to 100 person party. This was just a big group of friends catching back up, and we were casually drinking a few beers. We weren't throwing cans around and drinking bottles of vodka and all that. We were just casually having a few drinks.
But initially, you didn't tell the cops that there had been this drinking going on there, correct?
I'm not sure.
Well, when you spoke to them that night and gave them your handwritten statement, you didn't write anything in that statement about drinking going on at the party, correct?
I do not believe so.
Why not?
Like I said, the main focus that night was 20 minutes after a traumatic event where I just watched 4 of my best friends get stabbed, and I had unfortunately had to watch one of them bleed out in my front yard. So at the given time of that statement, the main priority was to get the key details of what happened in the front yard down.
Or to shape the story, right? To protect yourself and to protect your friends.
No, sir.
You weren't afraid that anybody might get in trouble if there was an admission of drinking going on that evening?
No, sir, but that's not under my control.
Okay, so you weren't afraid of that possibility, or you recognized it wasn't under your control and so you didn't want to give that up?
The cops were there, the law was there. If they felt that it was something that needed to look into. I'm not the law, so I don't know.
It wasn't something you were going to volunteer, is that fair to say?
When asked about it, I've always said that there was some drinking going on.
Okay. And then you said at some point someone showed up to the house in a Honda Pilot, correct?
Correct.
And you were shown a picture of that Honda Pilot that states exhibit number 30. Remember seeing that?
Yes, I do.
That's the same vehicle that you identified for us earlier, correct?
Yes, it is.
And when that vehicle showed up, it didn't have this damage to its windshield, did it?
Where?
You see this defect in the windshield here, sir, where I'm pointing right to the passenger side of the vehicle?
I can't really see it, but to my knowledge, I didn't really recognize anything with the windshield.
Okay. When that Honda Pilot showed up, you told us that you were still in the basement, correct?
Correct.
And you said we exited through the Bilco doors, right?
Yes.
And when you say we, that's the 18 to 20 boys that were there in the basement?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you went out through the Bilco doors to the right of the AC unit, correct?
Yep,
And you walked down the driveway and then you went across the street, correct?
I did.
Okay. And at this point, there were folks that were all inside the vehicle, correct? Nobody was outside the vehicle that was not with your party?
You mean the kids that came in the car were not outside the vehicle? No, they were not. They were in the car still.
And you said that you went immediately up to Tyler De Silva, who you could see through the windshield, correct?
Correct.
And that's because you knew Tyler De Silva, right?
I didn't know him. I knew who he was, and I knew of him because, as I said before, I grew up with his cousins who lived down the road from me.
Right. And you thought that you also knew his older brother, correct?
I have met him a time or two.
And you thought that you had enough rapport with Tyler De Silva that you could talk to him, right?
Correct. I thought that if anyone was going to be the one I was going to talk to get them to leave, that I would had my best chance with him.
And you told us again that at that time you weren't aware of the group chat, right?
No, I was not.
You didn't know Griffin Marcinzik was live texting this thing,
No.
taking photos.
I didn't find out about the group chat until I believe the next day or the following day when Officer Staples came to my house.
Okay. And you were standing on the grass on the other side of Laurel Glen Drive talking to Tyler through the passenger side window, correct?
Correct.
And at this point, the car is facing Farmhouse Lane, right?
Yes, it was.
And you noticed that people were arguing on the other side of the car, right?
Yes, I did.
And in fact, you told Officer Giddon that you recognized inside the car Mackenzie Traffic County, correct?
Yes.
As well as Caitlin and Autumn Murphy, correct?
I never said that.
You never told Officer Giddon that you saw Caitlin and Autumn Murphy inside the Pilot?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you know Caitlin and Autumn Murphy?
I do know who they are.
Who are they?
They are two girls that went to Shelton schools with us when we were younger, and they both also went to St. Joseph's High School.
Okay, and were they at your party as part of the...
No, they were not.
there? And you claim that you did not tell Officer Giddon that you also saw Caitlin and Autumn Murphy in that car?
I don't believe I did. And if I had said that, it was me saying that I had heard somebody else say that they were in the car. So that should have been clarified.
Okay, there was a lot of people talking after the fact, right?
I mean, yeah, we talked about it.
Right, everybody was trading information.
Somewhat, yeah.
And you would agree that some of that information just simply wasn't true, right?
Objection as to, how would he know?
I'll sustain it to the extent that it is broad. Counsel, if you want to limit it.
Did you come to learn that some of that information that you received was not actually true?
I guess we could say little bits and pieces, but nothing that was relevant to what had taken place that night.
Well, you told the officers that you saw the defendant flashing a knife, right?
Well, they brought me back in to clarify
You
that.
told the officers that, correct?
No, I believe I wrote that.
When you wrote that, who were you writing that for, Mr. Rich?
I was writing that for the police.
So you told the police that you saw the defendant flashing a knife, correct?
At the time I wrote it like that. But as I said before, they brought me back in to clarify that I never saw the knife, not one time the entire night.
You didn't volunteer that information later, right? When you said, gosh, hold on a second, I told those officers I saw a knife, but I didn't. I better go clarify it. You didn't do that, right?
I did do that.
You went to them and said, I need to clarify this for you?
So they had called me and told me that there was a few things in my statement that they wanted to double check. So they brought me back in, and immediately when they said, did you actually see him with the knife with your own two eyes? I said, no, I did not.
Okay. So again, that's not something you volunteered until they said, hey, we want to clarify a few things between your statements, right?
If you want to put it that way, I guess, but that was just because it was not to my knowledge.
Well, you didn't tell them that on the 15th, right?
No, I did not.
You didn't tell them that on the 16th, right?
No, I did not.
Didn't tell them that on the 17th, right?
No, I did not.
And it wasn't until the 18th when they called you and said, we need to clarify some things. We think there's some discrepancies in your statement, that you then told them you hadn't actually seen the defendant with a knife, correct?
Because prior to that, I didn't even know that it was something on there that needed to be clarified. So as soon as they brought me in and asked me, did you actually see the knife? I said, no, I did not.
You didn't know that when you wrote at 12:43 a.m. in your own hand that you saw a kid named Lito flashing a knife. You didn't know that that was something that you needed to clarify because it wasn't something you'd actually seen?
No, sir. At the time when I wrote that, as I said, it was a very traumatic experience for us. I've never had to give a statement before, and I've never had to write one, so I didn't know that that was something I couldn't write off of hearing it from somebody else.
Okay, so you didn't know that you needed to tell them the truth about what you had seen?
I did know that I needed to tell them the truth. I just didn't know that I needed to clarify that I wasn't the one that saw him with the knife.
Well, and you also didn't tell them about the can of WD-40 that you sprayed at the defendant, as you say, in his area, right?
I'm going to object as asked and answered.
I'll overrule it.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Sorry, you didn't tell them about the can of WD-40 that you're now telling us about, right?
On which day?
On any of these days, on the 15th when you gave various statements, on the 18th when you gave a statement.
I don't believe I did because it was not knowledge that I had remembered yet.
And you also didn't tell them that you're the one who threw the first swing at Mr. Valle, right?
I'm not sure, but I do believe that I did clearly state that I was in the fight. But yeah, it probably took me a little bit of time to remember exactly what had happened, but I did tell them that I was involved in the fight, yes.
Well, you didn't tell them that in your handwritten statement, right?
I'm not sure. I believe I did.
Okay. You don't think that you said, everyone was standing in my yard, everyone started going at it, and the next thing I saw was blood everywhere?
Sorry, can you repeat?
That's right. You don't think what you told them was, everyone was standing in my yard, everyone started going at it, and the next thing I saw was blood everywhere?
I believe I did write that at the time.
Okay. And you didn't say anything about, I threw the first punch at Mr. Valle because I was trying to defend Ty Woods?
No, I guess not.
In any event, you claim that you were standing there at the front passenger window talking to Tyler De Silva when you heard some arguing going on the other side, right?
Correct.
You looked through the car and you saw Mackenzie Traficante and Mr. Valle in the back seat, right?
Correct.
And you knew Mackenzie because you grew up together, right?
Yep.
And you knew that there were other kids in the car, but right now you're not sure who that was.
No idea.
Even though you told the cops that you saw Caitlin and Autumn Murphy, right?
Correct, which was
ended
just
up not
something
being
I had
true, right?
heard.
That was
As
something
I
else
said,
that you just heard.
there was other kids in the car. I wasn't able to tell who it was, so when somebody had said that them two were in the car, I figured that they could have been the other people in the car.
Gotcha. You figured that that's who it was. Now you know that that's not who it was because they were
Correct.
never there, right?
Correct.
But you told the cops that at the time.
I guess I did, yeah.
At this point, there's, by your estimate, 15 to 20 Shelton High kids surrounding this Honda Pilot, correct?
I wouldn't say surrounding. I believe I was actually the only one on the passenger side of the car. And I could be wrong, but to what I remember, I think I was the only one on that side of the car, and everybody else was on the driver's side between the car and my yard.
Okay. In fact, they weren't just on the driver's side between the vehicle and your yard, were they?
What do you mean by that?
They had their hands on the vehicle, right?
Some of them did.
Some of them did. Some of them were rocking the car back and forth, correct?
Correct, after a bottle was swung out of the back seat.
Let's talk about that bottle getting swung out of the back seat. You were walking around the front of the car when you saw this happen?
As I came around the front driver's side to see what was going on the other side of the car, I was able to see a hand come out the window in a swinging down motion, and I couldn't tell what it was. And then I heard the glass shatter and saw the shattered glass in the
Where was
street.
the shattered glass that you saw?
From the driver's side window, it was on the street right there.
Directly down in front of the vehicle?
Pretty close.
With these 15 to 20 people standing all on that one side of the vehicle, rocking it back and forth?
Correct, when they started rocking the vehicle after.
So you hear glass shatter,
Correct.
and then they start rocking the vehicle.
Yes.
And all 15 to 20 of those kids, by your estimate, are not actually surrounding the car, but they're all just on one side of the car.
From what I recall, I believe that everybody was mainly on the driver's side of the car.
And then, in the midst of all this shaking and rocking of the car, you say you reach in through the driver's side window over top of Mr. Snyder and grab the gear shift?
I reached for the shifter. I believe it was by the steering wheel on the column. So I reached towards it because he wasn't even considering when I was telling him to leave. So I made him see that I was going for his shifter, telling him to put his car in drive and go, because at that point when kids started shaking the car, I knew that if they didn't leave there, that this was going to turn into something bigger.
And Mr. Snyder, then, as you're reaching and leaning across and grabbing his shifter, he starts to roll up the window on you.
Correct.
You say you heard the car click into gear?
Yeah,
Correct.
and we saw the lights.
Okay. And then they drove up the street fast, right?
They did.
And when you say they drove up the street fast, did they drive down Laurel Glen towards Farmhouse Lane?
That's correct.
And you said as they did that, they were throwing cans and things out the windows, right?
They were
But nobody from your group was throwing anything at the vehicle.
not at that moment, no.
How many people were outside at this point?
Everybody that was there, I believe, was outside.
Right. So they drive down to the end of Farmhouse Lane. Did they come back at that point, or did they stop and get out what we saw on the video?
I don't know for sure, but I want to say the first time they went down the street, they actually went past Farmhouse Lane to the point where we could no longer see the car, which is why I had thought that they left at that point. Then we were able to see the headlights coming back in the other direction, and that is when they came back for the second time after they drove away and could have left.
Was that before or after you went down to the end of Farmhouse Lane?
When I walked down, that was before.
So they drive away.
Correct. They drive towards Farmhouse. I believe they went past. Then they come back down past my house again towards Adams,
Okay.
where I believe they make that corner onto Adams.
When you say they make that corner, if we're looking at Exhibit 1, are you saying that they take a right onto Adams?
They went this way.
And then where did you see the car after that?
And then after that, it comes back down the way it just came. So I'm not sure if maybe they turned around over here or what, but they ended up coming back from the same direction that the car had just previously gone in and drove by the house again, throwing more things out of the car, including the WD-40, and that is when the car stops by Farmhouse Lane after that.
So just want to make sure we've got your series of events down. Car initially arrives, it's parked at the corner near Adams Drive and on the other side of Laurel Glen from your house, correct?
Correct.
That's when you and the 15 or 20 folks all go outside and confront the car, right?
Yes.
You claim to hear glass shatter while there's 15 or 20 people there on one side of the vehicle. They're shaking and rocking the car. You somehow get in and lean across Mr. Snyder, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that last part?
You get in and lean across Mr. Snyder.
No,
correct?
before that?
You have seen glass shatter. There's 15 or 20 people shaking the vehicle, and you lean in across and grab the shift, right?
Yeah.
At that point, you say you hear the vehicle click into gear, and it drives down towards Farmhouse Lane, correct?
Correct.
Turns around by your account and comes back towards your house, correct?
Correct.
Makes a turn, a right onto Adams Drive, correct?
Yep.
You lose sight of the vehicle?
I did.
How long before you see it again?
Not that long. Like I said, they had to have turned around somewhere close because it came back pretty quick.
Could you see who was in the vehicle at that point?
At that point, I believe nobody had gotten out yet because at the rate of speed he was driving before, if anyone had gotten out of that car, they would not have just been able to step out unless he had stopped somewhere else and let people out. But
If your recollection is accurate, right?
correct, but to what I would think that everybody was still in the car at that point.
But you don't know who was in the vehicle. Is
I
that
do
fair to
not.
say?
That is fair to say.
And as it comes back up Adams, you say it turns onto Laurel Glen Drive, goes past the house again,
Correct.
and down towards Farmhouse Lane.
Correct.
And is it at that point that you see the vehicle stop?
Correct.
And it's at that point that you and what you describe as a group of three, yourself, maybe Ryan Hines, Ricky Fiola, or someone else that you couldn't know. So it was yourself and Ricky Fiola and someone else who you're not sure about went down the street, right?
Correct. So the only one I know that was with me was Ricky. I can't recall who else was with us, but it was definitely, I never said Ryan Hines was with me, no.
But you can't be sure that it wasn't him, right? Because there was
I
someone
can't
else.
be sure. I do know there was at least one other person, but I'm not sure who that was.
And you think it was just the three of you who went down the street, right?
I believe so.
May we see Exhibit 44, please?
It's the disc.
I'm going to ask you to watch this video with us, Mr. Rich. Can we pause it right there? You recall seeing this video just shortly ago?
Yes.
And this is shot from the Ring camera on 36 Laurel Glen Drive, which is the house down Laurel Glen Drive there on Exhibit 1 by the corner of Farmhouse Lane, correct?
Yes.
Now, in this video, Mr. Rich, do you see somebody already walking ahead of this last illuminated tree that we see there?
Over here on the corner?
I'm going to point over here. See this last illuminated tree to the far right? Just past one of the columns?
Yeah,
on the
do I
right.
see anyone over there?
Did you see somebody walking right here ahead?
I can't tell.
Okay, can we start that from the beginning? And I'd ask you to focus your attention, see if you can notice that this person is walking. And do you see somebody walking there?
I do.
Do you see that there's a vehicle? We just heard doors of the car stop. And then we see somebody else walking
Correct.
by the vehicle, in front of the vehicle, correct?
I do see that.
So those folks are already out of the car, and now we're hearing some yelling, correct?
Yep.
And from the left, we're starting to see your group, right?
Correct.
I count 1, 2, 3, 4. Would you agree 4 people so far?
Right.
Now I see a 5th person coming. Do you see that?
I do.
Do you see other folks coming as well? 6, 7. Do you see those other folks?
I do see more, yes.
And those people are all coming from the direction of your home, correct?
So as it appears, yes.
You would agree that there was at least 2 people that were out of that vehicle, correct?
Prior to us walking down,
Prior to you walking down.
I would agree.
Okay. And that then a group of at least 7 of you were seen on that video, correct?
That's how it appears, but as I said, to my knowledge, the only one I knew was with me was Ricky, and I thought there was at least one more of us. Clearly, there was more than that.
And in fact, you walked past and had some interactions with the people that had already gotten out of the vehicle, correct?
I did.
But you don't recall any of that, fair to say?
I didn't say I don't recall any of that. I just don't recall who was actually out of the vehicle.
Well, you told us that you didn't have any interactions with the people in the vehicle at that point, correct?
Other than telling them to get out of there and that they needed to go, not really, no.
Okay. And at this point, they are down in front of Laurel Glen Drive, heading towards Farmhouse Lane, right?
What's that?
They were down at this point where we see it on the video, down in front of 36 Laurel Glen Drive by Farmhouse Lane, correct?
Correct.
And that is about 2 football fields or 647 feet away from your house. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate.
And you followed that vehicle all the way down there, right?
When people started to get out, yeah, we walked down there.
Okay. And you told them, "Let's go, you pussies," right?
Correct.
And that's when you say you threw the can of WD-40, right?
I did.
You later picked that can back up, you're now telling us, right?
After it was thrown at me again, I didn't want to leave it in the street in front of my neighbors' houses, so yes, I picked it up.
We didn't see that can getting thrown back at you on this video, did we?
Nope.
And you said after that you were just walking back to the house trying to get everyone back inside, right?
I was heading back towards the house with the intent to get everyone back there into the house, yes.
And did you call the police at that point?
No, I did not.
Well, why not?
Because I figured that every time they drove away, I thought that they were going to leave. I guess thinking about it now, knowing that they had the first 2 opportunities to not come back when they drove away and they didn't, I probably should not have made the assumption that they weren't going to leave, but never in a million years did I ever think that this was going to happen, so I did not call the police.
You didn't call the police and say, "Hey, there's unwanted people at our house and they're throwing stuff at us," because you didn't want the cops to come and find out that there was underage drinking, right?
Can you rephrase that?
Well, You didn't call
Repeat
the
that.
cops to report what you are now telling us was a crime at that time, did you?
No, I did not.
And it wasn't because you didn't want the cops to come and find out that there was underage drinking going on, right?
I'm confused what you're asking. So you're asking me if the reason I didn't call the cops was because there was underage drinking at my house?
Right.
No, the reason I didn't call the cops was because I figured these kids were going to leave at any of the given 3 or 4 times they had the opportunity to. And I never thought in a million years that they were going to come back to my house, trespass on my property, and stab 4 of my friends.
Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Is there a question pending, Your Honor?
There was not at that point.
Counsel.
So it wasn't because you were afraid of underage drinking going on at the house. That wasn't the reason that you didn't call the cops.
No,
The reason was that you thought you could handle this yourself.
I thought that they were going to leave any of the 4 times they could have. And like I said, I guess thinking back now, knowing that the first 3 times they could have left when they had the opportunity, they didn't. Maybe I should have handled it different, but again, who would have ever thought that 3 juniors or whatever they were in high school from St. Joe's were going to come back to my house, trespass on my property, and stab 4 of my friends?
Okay. And then you told us that as you're walking back to the house, someone threw a can of WD-40 at you, correct?
Correct, they threw it back at me.
And that the defendant came off the side of the bushes, correct?
Correct,
You told him not to come near you, right?
I did,
And then you used the can of WD-40 to spray it in his direction, right?
I did.
What you actually did was you sprayed it right in his face and his eyes, right?
I'm not sure. Like I said, I was spraying it in his direction. He kept approaching me, so I can't tell you where he was getting sprayed. I aimed the can at him and I sprayed it to use it to distance myself.
And you just saw yourself in that video pass by him while he was standing on the street, not in that vehicle, correct?
Probably, but I'm not sure if that was him or where he was at that time.
And you never told the officers in any of your prior statements about the defendant throwing this WD-40 at you and coming off the side of the bushes, right?
Well, one, I don't know if he threw it at me. I'm not sure which one of them threw it at me, but given where he was when he came out of the bushes, when they threw it back at me, I don't believe it could have been him because he was obviously already down by those bushes for me to have walked by him over there.
So you don't
And it
think
came
was
from
him.
behind me, more towards the car.
So you don't think that it was him throwing that
I
can of WD-40
don't
at
think
you?
he's the one that threw it back at me when I had picked it up to walk back to the house because he was already obviously down in that direction somewhere for him to have come out behind me.
And then you told us that everybody started to make their way back into the house, right?
Correct.
Through the Bilco doors.
Correct.
You walked back first, but you knew that Ricky was still down there at Farmhouse Lane.
I did.
How did you know that he was still down there?
Because I walked back by myself and he's the only one I knew went down there with me. And if he didn't come back with me, he had to still be down there.
Where were these other 5 or 6 people that we saw here in this video?
They must have been down there as well, but I'm not sure.
You don't recall Ricky coming back inside, but you're certain you went back inside.
I 100% went back inside.
Who else went back inside with you?
I'm not sure exactly who. There was still a large crowd out in the front, and I kind of was just motioning everybody to get back inside the house.
What was the large group out in the front still doing?
Probably standing there. Honestly, I'm not sure. I was down the street, but as soon as I got back to the house, I had everybody go back inside.
Even the folks that remained in the yard that you just described?
I'm sorry, what's that?
You told us you went back into the house, but that people remained in the front yard. Now you're telling us you had everybody go back inside.
Who remained in the front yard?
You tell me, sir. You're the one who said people remained in the front yard.
I never said anybody remained in the front yard. I said The only people that were still out there was, to my knowledge, Ricky down the street, but I had everybody else around there go back into the house that was still in the
So
front
when you
yard.
went into the basement, after coming back from Farmhouse Lane, you're saying there was nobody else in the front yard?
I do not believe so, no.
And then you heard somebody yelling, "They're back," right?
Correct.
And you looked out and you could see that they were in the front yard.
Well, we walked back outside, and upon coming up on the front yard, I was able to see the car in the street with the headlights on, and the defendant and Tyler DeSilva were now trespassing on my property.
Okay. And at that point, you go out into the front yard, correct?
Correct.
How many people were out in the front yard with you?
I believe everybody had followed me back outside. I don't think anyone was gonna leave me to go out there alone. So eventually the entire basement did make its way back outside, and I believe everyone did make their way back out there.
About 30 of you out there in the front yard?
Yeah, including girls too.
And you described your position as being near the cement box and the red bush, right?
Relatively, yes.
And that Tyler DeSilva was in front of you, correct?
Correct.
Near the mailbox.
Towards the mailbox.
And that Mr. Valle was off to your left, by the left of the bush and the right of the cement box, right?
What was that last part? To the left of the what?
To the left of the red bush and to the right of the cement box.
Which way are you looking at that? From the street or from the house?
I believe you described it as being Valle was off to your left,
He was off to my left, correct, with my back to the house, so yes.
so you couldn't really see where Mr. Valle was, right?
He was peripheral to me, so I was able to see him and the couple kids over there and know where their position was, because they weren't that far. They were only maybe 2 steps away from me. But until the fact where Tyler DeSilva shoved me backwards is when they came into my full sight.
And you said that, again, you approached Tyler DeSilva because you knew him and his cousins, right?
Correct.
And you said, "Dude, I've known your family and cousins for years," right?
Correct.
At this point, where are the other 30 people?
I wasn't paying attention to that, but I believe some kids were still coming out of the basement at that point, and I believe that there were people behind me and also to the side of me.
Could you see anybody in front of you near the street?
I don't recall anyone being over there. Could there have been? Maybe, but I do not remember.
And it is your recollection that Tyler DeSilva told you to go fuck yourself and shoved you backwards, correct?
Correct.
With these other 30 kids behind you,
Correct, which he knew.
which he knew that there were 30 kids.
They have obviously seen the amount of kids there were. The minute we walked out to the car the first time, they proceeded to keep coming back knowing that there was 30 kids or 20 dudes standing there.
Okay. And you said that there were a few kids near Mr. Valle, right?
I believe so, yes.
And one of those you knew, and that was Ty Woods.
Correct.
You described him as close to a younger brother for you as it gets, right?
That's right.
And after the shove, you've now got Mr. Valle in your vision, and you say that he went to swing on Ty Woods.
Correct. I watched him take a backswing like he was going to hit him in the back of the head, and Ty had his head turned. I was only 2 steps away. I pretty much stepped into it to get between it and punched him in the face.
Okay? And then after that, you say that Mr. DeSilva punched you in the back of your head.
Correct.
How do you know that was Mr. De Silva punched you in the back of your head?
Because nobody else that was at my house was going to be punching me in the back of the head, and he is also the one that just pushed me from the direction where the punches were coming from to the back of my head.
It wasn't because the group of 20 to 30 people was stampeding forwards and people got shoved into one another.
You would have to ask him that, not me. But to what I know, I didn't see any of that going on after, because after I had hit the defendant, that was the last time I ever saw him that entire night, because as I said, when I was getting punched in the back of the head, my focus had turned to Tyler De Silva at this point, who I ended up on the ground with instead.
Now, again, you're telling us today that you swung and hit Mr. Valle in the face that evening, but you didn't tell that to the officers when you spoke to them on the 15th a couple times, or the 18th, correct?
I guess not. I had told them I was in the fight, and there was only 2 kids that I could have been fighting with, so.
You didn't tell them that you threw the first punch?
I guess not. At the time, I guess not, no.
And you say that you went to the ground and that Mr. De Silva was on top of you?
Correct.
And that he was swinging and you tied up his arms, right?
Correct.
And that you couldn't see much after that, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I was on the ground underneath him, so I couldn't see anything.
And despite having told officers originally that you'd seen Lito with a knife, ultimately what you told us here today is that you didn't see the defendant with a knife, correct?
I had never seen the knife that entire night with my own eyes at all.
And you would agree, and you've described for us, that this fight was a chaotic scene, correct?
It was a chaotic scene, yes.
And there were only 2 kids that got out of the vehicle that were from the St. Joe's party, correct?
Correct. 2 of them got out of the car.
And there were roughly 30 of you, 20 of which you've described as being boys, correct?
Correct, which they knew.
In fact, you continue to tell me that, sir, which they knew. How do you know what they knew?
Because they were in the car when we all came outside. They saw how many of us there were. They drove up and down the street 3 or 4 times and saw that there was that many of us, and even when he came on my property, nobody immediately got physical with them. I was still trying to talk to Tyler De Silva and get him to leave, and they saw with their own eyes how many of us were standing there and decided that he was going to get physical with me. So yeah, they knew how many of us were there.
So it's your recollection that Mr. De Silva is the one who decided to get physical with you?
Correct, he shoved me.
Was Mr. De Silva at any point holding a phone or filming any of this as it was going on?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
Did you ever see Mr. Valle with a phone filming or recording anything of what was going on?
Nope.
Did you see, however, a video of the fight itself?
I did.
And that was taken by Tanner Chernowski, correct?
Correct.
And you also identified for us another person who is in that video with a phone in his hand, and that was Ricky Fiola, correct?
Correct.
And was there anybody else that you saw that was filming that evening?
I was on the ground. I didn't see anybody filming or holding a phone until I saw the video after, which I still am not even sure if there was a recording going or if those were just flashlights. But yeah, I didn't see anybody else recording, no.
Well, you did see the video, correct?
I did
Recorded
see
by
that
Tanner
video
Chernowski.
Tanner took, correct.
So you know that that one video
I
was
do
at
know
least
that
taken,
that
correct?
video was taken.
And did you tell any of the officers that that video existed?
No, I did not. They actually showed it to me first, and that was my first knowledge of it.
You didn't know about that video until it was shown to you by the officers?
Correct.
Are you friends with Tanner Chernowski
I am.
on his Snapchat stories?
Yeah, I am.
And you weren't aware that he had posted it that very evening?
I was not aware that he had posted it ever, and I had never seen it, so no, I was not.
So, Mr. Rich, is it fair to say that despite a number of opportunities to tell the police as much as what you have recalled today, you didn't actually tell them any of those things regarding the WD-40 can?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Is it fair to say that despite having a number of opportunities, you didn't tell them that you were the person who first punched Mr. Valle?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Is it fair to say that you didn't call the police that night at any point?
Objection, asked and answered.
I'll allow that one.
No, I did not call the police at any point that night.